I'm Javier Nieto. I'm the Dean of the College of Public Health and Human Sciences, and really glad that you're all here with us, joining us today to hear from Bob Moore, the founder and director of Bob's Red Mill, one of our OSU's closest friend. Can you hear me? And one of our most generous contributors. Bob has contributed more than $6 million to OSU, particularly to the Moore Center and other programs. But what's very special is his passion for health of people and community, because we share that passion, and is an inspiration to us and to many in our college, in our university, as we move, as we make progress to improve the health and communities all over the state and all over the world. So we will learn more from Bob about his work in partnership with OSU and the Moore Family Center, which has been primarily focused on nutrition and living a long, healthy life. We will also have the opportunity to hear from Dr. Emily Hall, who's professor in the College of Public Health and Human Sciences in the program of nutrition and director of the Moore Family Center. And an absolute superstar, as you will realize very soon. I mean, she's an incredibly unique scientist in that she cares and she does work, cutting-edge work in the laboratory, in basic nutritional research. She will give you a quick glimpse today about that, but also, but that was somewhat unique, because not too many people in that type of work do this. She's very passionate about translating what she learns in the lab and her colleagues learn in the lab to actual practice in the community, to actually result in the benefits for the health and well-being of people and communities. It is this critically important work by Emily and others is inspired, and in part, as I said, by Bob's passion and work, by my friend Bob Moore. And I would just like you to help me welcome them. I believe Emily is going to speak first. Thank you very much, all. And thank you.
So I'm not Bob. I'm the opening act. So thank you for the kind introduction. This is actually the first time that Bob and I have kind of done this team presentation. So I'm really excited to be here and share the stage with Bob. So we cannot talk about healthy living with Bob here and not talk about whole grains. And whole grains is truly a magical food. And I'm going to share with you some of the reasons why we need to make sure more people are incorporating whole grains into their diet. One serving of whole grains, just one, can have such a huge impact in terms of chronic disease prevention and decreasing. There's tons of evidence with heart disease, inflammatory infections, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about cancer prevention, which is one of my main laboratory research areas. So one thing I want to share with you, so when you think about cancer, I want you to, I'm getting ready for classes that are starting up next week at Oregon State, so I'm going to give you a quiz. I want you to raise your hand. You smoke 5 packs of cigarettes a day, you're going to increase your risk for cancer. Yes. Hands raised, correct? Good job. So now, if I ask that same question, what you eat makes a big difference in terms of your cancer. Yes. Okay, you are a bit of a biased audience because you came to a talk about healthy living. If I ask that same question to any other general audience, not as many hands are going to go up. And that strong association of smoking and cancer, doesn't matter walk of life, they know that. But that link of what you consume isn't nearly as strong. But when you actually look at the data, Poor diets contribute to more cancer in the United States and worldwide than does even smoking. Yet, that same association of what you put in your body in terms of what you're eating every day isn't nearly as strong, and we need to change that. Bob is one of these people that are helping the world change that. When we think about cancer as well, so I study colon cancer, breast cancer, and prostate cancer, and unfortunately in the US we're #1 for lots of things, and unfortunately we're also #1 in each of these 3 cancers. Sorry, there's feedback. I have Asian heritage. I come from Hong Kong and China in terms of both sides of my parents, and when you look at Asian rates of these cancers, they're much lower. So here's an example, rates of colon cancer in Japan versus US. You can see there's a big difference. Now what happens if a Japanese person moves to the US? Do you think the bar is closer to Japan or closer to the US? US. You are a great group. Come to my classes next term. So this clearly says there's something about the environment. It's not just your genes are important in terms of cancer risk. We know it runs in families, but your environment also plays a big role. And I want to pose to you that it's your diet that's going to be one of the biggest factors in terms of that risk. And whole grains are one of those components. We know that close to half of the cases of colon cancer could be prevented simply by eating better and moving a little bit. This is over 60,000 people in the US that could not suffer from cancer simply by eating better and making sure that they move. We should be able to do this, right? So what do we need to do? So one of the things that we need to do is look at fruit and vegetable intake, but also we really need to look at whole grains. And why are whole grains such a fantastic food? So in colon cancer in particular, it's estimated that just 1 serving of whole grains, so 1 cup of oatmeal, can decrease your risk of colon cancer by 10%, which is actually a big impact. 1 cup of oatmeal. We've got some oatmeal cups that you just around the corner. Take it with you. You got your 10% right now. So why are whole grains so great? I spend entire classes talking about this, but the 30-second version is they've got lots of great stuff inside them. Whole grains, you often just think about fiber. Whole grains are so much more than the fiber. Here's a list of, sorry, my pointer doesn't work, of all the nutrients. So there's essential nutrients like minerals, there are vitamins like vitamin E, and then there's these non-nutritive components called phytochemicals, chemicals that are plant-derived that also have a major impact in terms of our health. So not only are there positive things within, and again, Bob will talk about this a little bit more, all these things go away when you go to refined. So you need to consume the whole grain. So not only do the whole grains have these chemicals that help our body fight against lots of things, not just cancer, but the whole grains also help what are called the microbiome. So these are bacteria and bugs that inhabit our intestinal tract. There are trillions of them. So there are more cells in terms of bacteria in our gut than there are in our entire body in some cases. And our grains help with these things. And there's a lot of new evidence that these bugs make us happy for lots of reasons. They help our gut health, but even beyond what's happening in our gut, those bacteria help with lots of parts of our bodies as well. So it's not just gut health. And grains are a big component. And the reason why grains are so important in this process is that they help move the bacteria to be the good bacteria that help positive disease prevention, but more, and also in addition to that, they help create new compounds that are now used by the body. So I study a compound called butyrate that helps not only with your gut health, but also seems to help cancer. And this includes breast and prostate. So not just areas in the gut, they go beyond. There's a whole new line of evidence that these compounds also reach the brain and are important in terms of cognition. And another big area in my lab is looking at how it affects immune function as well. So the bottom line is eat whole grains. They're really great. I have been in nutrition for many, many years.
I love that.
It should be this easy. I'm telling you, you should eat your whole grains. You should go do it. Easy story, ton of science that shows this, but it's not that easy, is it? Unfortunately, here is what America looks like. So whole total grains is this. So where this is, the middle line down the center is where we should be in terms of a good American diet. The orange are things that we're not doing so well in. So in terms of whole grains, less than half of the people in the US are consuming enough. Fruits and vegetables are also fairly poor, and they're having way too much added sugars, fats, and salt as well. So even though, despite the science, people aren't doing it. And to be honest, I've studied, again, nutrition for a long time. If I say, eat your fruits and vegetables, they're good for you, most people know they should be doing it. Eat your whole grains, most people know whole grains are healthy, but they're not doing it. How do we make sure that people are doing it? And this is another big thing that's a big emphasis in the Moore Family Center. How do we make it real for the community? How do we empower individuals to adopt these healthy lifestyles? And to do this, despite all the science that I can do in my laboratory, I need partners. I need partners in the community. I need friends in the community. I need friends everywhere. And these friends not only need to share the same passion in terms of moving forward, in terms of the role of nutrition and health, but what they have to do is help create an environment that creates this culture of health. And what I'm going to invite Bob to come up. Bob is someone who truly embodies this, not only as a person in his own personal philosophy, but in his company as well, in terms of offering a means to make sure that healthy foods are available to communities. And he's a strong inspiration for all the activities at the Moore Family Center. And I'm going to invite Bob now to tell you about some of his passions and some of his philosophies and things that he's done in his many, many wise years.
Thank you, Emily. That was wonderful. For half my life, perhaps a little more than that, I have been trying to figure out just what we can do to make the world a better place. And we've been working on it for a long time. We're finally getting it into place. It's finally coming around to where we can specifically point to certain things that nobody can say that's not true. We've been sold a bill of goods in a very specific way that will make sense to you when I tell you what it is after you just heard what Emily said. There it is right there. I have given talks all over the world, and nobody understands the difference between white rice and brown rice. I think I dropped something here. Sounds like you can still hear me, though. Maybe I don't need that. Thank you, my savior. This is a kernel of wheat, right here. You very seldom ever get that in your diet. And up until 25, 30, 40 years ago, you hardly ever saw this. Never, just wasn't around. That's a whole grain. It's a wonderful part of life, wonderful part of agriculture, wonderful part of everything, and it needs to be part of you. I brought this. This depicts a kernel of wheat. I know it's a little bit bigger than this. This represents corn, rice, wheat, barley, all the various grains. And because of the way they're made up, they have three components. The bran is part, and if I can break the magnet, they have, that's the outer layer. Here's the germ, a very precious part. Kind of look at the germ and I think of Charlie, my wife, who really made us who we are and got us started because of her concern about our three sons and what they ate and what we did. She was really the inspiration to make me just open the door and go another way. So I kind of liken this to my sweet wife, Charlie. I lost her about a year ago. We had 66 years together. So it was a wonderful time, and mostly of what I'm talking about and who I am has come about because she needed to keep after me, make sure I went the right way and did the right thing. So I want you to see the three components of almost all the grains, probably all the grains. This is the white endosperm that you've been eating forever. Your kids were raised on it. You were raised on it. It isn't just by itself. It doesn't do it. That's all there is to it. You need these other components, and the milling industry throughout the world actually has sold us all a bill of goods because this stuff spoils, has a shelf life, and there's no self-respecting insect in the world that won't go after this. So we need to lower the risks of losing our products and whatnot. So we just take this stuff away and flush it down the drain. And that really has been the story of the downfall of health in our land and the whole world. And then we've introduced these things to every place. So the rice is this way, the corn is this way, degerminated. The wheat is this way, everything. I can't, it's hard for me to get over it, just what this all means and why, and it's so simple. That's the part of it, there's nothing to it. I've been making all these wonderful whole grains now for 45 years. And if I had my life to live over, I would have started a lot sooner because I really love what I do. People are always asking me if I'm retired, and I said, well, I don't know. I think I missed it someplace. I really love my people, my business, what we represent, and I, quite frankly, oftentimes end up down at work just poking around, talking to people, watching the mills turn 7 days a week. Not full time, but anyway. I'm just now starting my talk, but Emily just so inspired me to say these things that I have to remember that you've been sold a bill of goods. Be careful what you eat. Okay, now I'm going to start my talk. Our mission in life, really even from the beginning, is to offer the most diverse array of natural whole grain foods for every meal of the day. This is in a New York City grocery store. When I started my business, nobody had this. You couldn't go anywhere except a health food store. Usually there was 2 or 3 of them in every community. But we've been reasonably successful to bring about the whole grains throughout the world in a wide variety. If we've missed some, be sure and send me a letter or something. I think we are now the leading brand in healthy natural, and I'm so proud to be a part of all this. That's kind of reaching from the beginning to the last week's success. It's wonderful to see our products like that. Stone milling. How did we get food in the very beginning of time? We've been all over the world archaeologically, and we see these stones everywhere. It's just been the panacea for grinding grains everywhere. Even the Bible told the Israelites to not use their millstones as a surety on a loan. Why? Every family unit had their own ability to grind flour. We find these millstones everywhere. All countries, all places. Well, if you give the banker your millstones and then you don't pay the money back, you're dependent on society to feed you. And we sure have a lot of that now. And I don't know, maybe it's millstones are the cause of it all. I don't know, I'm kidding you. They developed millstones as they went along through the ages. They went to a simple millstone like this that you could put grain in the middle and grind it. It did a great job. These very millstones are the same material, from the same quarry that I use in my mill. It's about 40 miles east of Paris, and those same stones are in Pompeii. I've been there a couple of times and have enjoyed seeing them. There are wonderful millstones. They came out of the same quarry. The grooves, everything, they turn very slow. They're just wonderful. I can't believe how fortunate we are. I have about 24 millstones like this. Originally we just had one here and one there, and then we had to put them together because people like yourself wanted our products and I couldn't keep up with you. So we put two together. And instead of getting 500 pounds an hour, we got 1,000 pounds an hour. So we're doing real well. The other day at a meeting, our miller, the fellow in charge of the mill, we asked him how he was doing, and he said, well, the mill room is milling flour. and we waited for him to say more, and he didn't say any more. He was just indicating to us that he was very busy. And they're beautiful mills. I love them. They're very cool. And we've in all the 45 years of doing this, I haven't worn a millstone out yet. They're lovely. I have not worn a millstone out yet. So they have a lot to say for themselves. These are some of the able to manufacture all these wonderful products, and how did we start? So I guess we'll start a little in the beginning now. Well, 1961, I had failed in business. I guess we just didn't do the right thing. We ran out of money, and we were able to move on to a 5-acre dairy goat farm in Elk Grove, California. It turned out to be one of the most wonderful times. 4-H, 3 boys, animals, Patty, our beagle, and my wife and me. And it was a great time. And that's where we kind of got into this. I love business, and I've been operating a successful business of my own in the past. I had my first business when I was 25 years old. As an entrepreneur at heart, the years on the farm were a low point in business, and I continue to look for ways to be an entrepreneur again. I look kind of skinny there, don't I? Emily said, how many packs of cigarettes do you smoke? I was smoking then. And my doctor, a lovely fella, told me, Bob, I wish you'd get another doctor. And I said, Dr. Kilcher, why? Why are you saying that? Our family loves you. And he said, I don't want to stand by while you die of smoking. My father died at 49. 3 packs a day. That's not good. I can't say enough bad about tobacco. But the changing point were 2 things. Charlie and her grandmother, who gave her these lovely books by Adele Davis. The Health Builder was written by Rodell, who started Prevention magazine. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that. Gaylord Hauser, Adele Davis, those people were wonderful. They're way ahead of their times. This is all in the 40s and 50s. And we read those books. Obesity, diabetes, heart disease were all being talked about then. And these people, various writers, really were saying almost the same thing we're saying today. Your food's all devalued. You're not eating what you should be eating, and they knew why you should eat it, and they knew what you should eat. And so these books, we learned that where diet is concerned, our personal preferences do not change the reality of what our bodies need for good health. And could I repeat that? Remember now, every one of you loves salt, sugar, fat. And your kids can't get enough of it. We call it the bliss point. Okay, live that way. And have a world of sick people and obesity, heart disease. It's crazy. It's crazy because what you like is not necessarily, probably, definitely not, what's going to give you long life and health. So remember, through these books we learned that where diet is concerned, our personal preferences do not change the reality of what our bodies need for good health. If you want good health, take a hold of yourself and find out what is going to give you good health and just simply eat that way. And if you don't want to do that, then there's plenty of people you can stand here by the hour and see folks that eat what they want. And that's all they eat. You cannot live healthily that way. That's all there is to it. Charlie began making the best bread I've ever tasted in my life. There was a couple of little health food stores near the Sacramento area, of which I now have a full section in. And I had never seen a health food store. I knew nothing of whole grains, but I learned. And I gradually began to pull back. I quit smoking. We started eating a healthier diet, which included wholesome whole grains. And I'm telling you, we did. It was wonderful. We felt better. We lived better. It was really great. Two of my three boys are in this business now. So we pretty much got the whole family in there. So we were convinced. Okay. I needed some more convincing. We all do, you know. You get your doubts about things, and maybe that's not true. And after all, during much of this time, Charlie and I found inspiration in the scriptures. We found the first page told us what real food was. This isn't my opinion, my interpretation, but there it is. Then God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb that yields seed, and the fruit tree that yields fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in itself on the earth." And it was so. And God said to man, "See, I have given you every herb that yields seed, which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed, to you it shall be for food." We were believers. It made sense to us, and it's made sense all these years since. It says whole grain to me. Anyway, that's an inspiration. We all have various things that inspire us to do things, good things, right things, and that's what probably was the most convincing part of my movement throughout this part of my life. Okay, I already showed you that. I got ahead of myself. Emily got me so wound up when I listened to her that I already did this, didn't I? In order for any food to meet the criteria from the first page of the Bible, the seed or the germ must be intact, not separated from the kernel of wheat. This is considered to be the definition of a whole grain. Science and research show that whole grains are an important part of what our bodies need for optimum health and all the things that involve in those grains. I'm very proud to be able to do this for a lifetime, for a business. And I am in 81 countries with these products. And when I started, you could hardly find this stuff anyplace. So, unbeknownst to me, I have helped people turn to a better diet by just doing what I did. But how in the world did I ever get started? Well, I got started a block over and about 3 blocks down in 1929. My dad worked on the Oregonian, and my mother was home having me. 621 6th Street. The addresses were all different back in 1929. That's how I got started here in Portland. 90 years ago. 90 and a half years ago. I might as well take advantage of it. Well, that hasn't got anything to do with this, has it? No. I've had a few things happen in my life. I looked down and there was something, and I picked it up and looked at it, and it was something interesting. And this is the same kind of a thing. I walked in. I'm an avid reader. I read everything. I read all the time. The only thing I don't read is novels and mysteries and stuff. If it didn't happen, I don't want to read it. But I read all the time. Okay. So this book, John Goffey's Mill, printed in 1945, was laying on a library table, our local library, and someone had taken it out of the stacks and not checked it out, put it on the table. And I picked it up and I looked at it. Here's mills. And I recognized a mill and a dam and an old building. And I took it home and read it. And I read it again and I handed it to my wife and we read it. And I'm going to tell you, that was a total different life from then on. I have to find a mill someplace. George Woodbury, who was a Goffey through his mother, he made a statement that once he got the mill going, the water wheel going and the stones turning, that the public beat a pathway to his door for his whole grains. Beat a path to his door. And I thought, if I could get a mill, people would beat a pathway to my door. So we started looking for mills. And the first thing I did was go to the library and take out the American manufacturers, and I looked through it and found grains and milling and stuff, and I wrote about 10 letters to around the country. I only got a response from one, but this one said, I know this fella who had an old mill, and he was just in, and I think he might be able to help you. And I called him, and sure enough, he said, yes, they're going to tear a certain mill down in Fayetteville, North Carolina. That's a long way from here. But he said, I think I can get those mills for you. I didn't have a building. But you don't need a building. I could set the mill up right there in the street if I wanted to. So I was able to buy all the equipment I needed and go into business. We found a mill too. This is out on Rothy Road, probably 8-9 miles from here. I found a mill of my own, and I found my own millstones. And these are lovely. I still have them. They're in our lobby, so you can look at them, and they're wonderful. And that mill right there has been running since 1872. It came around the Horn in 1870 and up the Columbia River and over to Dufur, where it ran in the Boyd Flour Mill from 1872 through 1933. Well, the Depression, lots of other things. White flour, they weren't making white flour with that, I can tell you. And so it just shut down. And I was able to get the equipment out of it. It was wonderful. So we acquired what we needed to make a business. When we put this together out there, why we grind grain with stones? I've probably already talked about this, but there are several benefits of stone grinding grain as opposed to processing grain through high-speed roller mills. Stone grinding is slow and it's cool, it's simple and direct, it keeps the living germ intact, and that's exactly what it does. It takes the whole thing and grinds it into grain, and believe me, you can make lovely things with it. You can make pancakes, and you can make bread, and you can make all kinds of things. Roller mills, they really serve high speed, very hot. They're rather complicated, and they separate the bran and the germ from the endosperm in great shakers that separate this so it's just pure white, like food's supposed to be. But it isn't healthy. Emily talked about what we're not eating, what we should be eating, what's the matter with it. I promise you, we're not going to have a healthy society anywhere. Your kids, your grandkids, your great-grandkids, you yourself are not going to be healthy as long as you make this part the only part of the grains that you eat. In whatever capacity or that you want, you are not going to have full health, the health you could have, that you can have, by obeying just a simple, straightforward reality of what is healthy and what you need to eat. Here is the complexity of a white flour processing using a roller mill. The result is that the grain is stripped of its bran and germ. Its chemical nutrients are added. Comes in as wheat, cleans, goes into a tank, goes into a hopper, and then it goes between roller mills. Actually, some of them have as many as 7 and 8 roller mills to make sure they get every tiny piece out of it. And then it goes through filters and whatnot, and when you get down here, all you've got about 72% of the grain. The rest of it is laying there on the table dead and gone down the creek or wherever they do with it. Actually, they feed most of it to animals, so they're healthier than you are. Here's the stone mill. And this is what we do 24/7. We bring this lovely wheat in, and incidentally, we have contracts with the same farm co-ops up in Montana, in Saskatchewan, in Oregon, Eastern Oregon, Montana, that we've had since we started. Many, many years we've had these relationships. It's just been wonderful, very cozy and warm. We clean the grain because it's always got chaff in it. We put it in a tank, and then we just put it through these lovely mills slowly, and we grind it into flour, whole grain flour, which makes marvelous products. Very simple. Very, very simple. Eating grains whole without removing the vital nutritious parts gives our bodies better health. We're sure beating this thing to death, aren't we? I hope you know. I'm getting tired of it myself. Anyway, I really do want you to leave here with the idea that you really have been sold a bill of goods. I know. I know it makes you feel helpless sometimes. But 14% is the bran, fiber, all the things of gut health. I have a nice book. I didn't bring enough, I'm sorry. But I have a wonderful book written by Robert Martindale, MD, up at OHSU, on the value of whole grains and good gut health. We know these things are true. Quit eating that stuff. This has nothing to do with the reality of how your body works and how you're going to be healthier. Sorry, I should have brought a lot more than that. Anyway. So, anyway, and then the germ is so vital. The vital parts of the germ. So let's look at the world's wheat production over the past 100 years. I'm fortunate to have Nancy, my assistant, work on this. It took a little time to find all these facts and figures. 26 billion tons of wheat were milled into flour during the milling process in the past 100 years. During the milling process, 4,480,000 tons of precious germ and bran were removed from the grain. This is the bill of goods that the world, especially the United States, have been sold, and your kids and yourself. This would fill 115 million rail cars stretching 50 times around the earth. It's amazing, really. Rice production in 2012, 729 million tons. That's a whole lot of grain. Nearly 124 million tons of bran and germ were removed to make rice white. The bran is a good source of insoluble fiber. The brown rice helps reduce the risk of developing diabetes. White rice increases the risk of diabetes. And so many people, everywhere I go, think that this is a brand of, or a rice, a certain rice, and that this is another rice, brown rice. You have to go buy brown rice, or you have to go buy white rice. You got to work brown rice over to get white rice, and you work it over to your detriment. I hope some of this stuff is new to you, to one or two of you anyway, because I have so many questions all the time that I think, gee, nobody seems to know this. But we do know it now. Well, whole grains, healthy food. This is why I haven't retired yet. I know those, I probably still, don't I look like that? Yeah. Anyway, look at that. We get our mills from Denmark, Skjold, Denmark. I just love it. It's just great stuff. I have a whole lot of them. When we put 100 pounds of wheat in, and we get 100 pounds of flour out, and that's how we operate. I do that with spelt and amaranth and rice and everything. It's good. It's good, healthy stuff. You can't really eat it whole unless you cook it for a long time, and you can do that too. It's perfectly healthy. Bob's Red Mill, my first location in 1970. I got to tell you, when we opened the doors, I got a call from Kathy Smith of Channel 2. This only old people here are going to recognize her. And she wanted to know if she could come out. She'd heard about me, and she wanted to know if she could bring a camera out and take some pictures. So here I am after being open a couple of weeks, and there I am on TV talking to Kathy about how I'm doing the same stuff we're talking about right now. So I've been hammering away at this a long time. And you know, Portland was awfully good to me. And then the other channels came out, and then pretty soon we were just going. Then Mr. Meyer came out, and he said, Bob, I want these products in my stores. I'm going to open health food stores in every health food section in every one of my stores. He had 44 at the time, and we did that. As far as I can see, a lot of this whole grain movement, the beginning of true health and eating, came about because I said yes, and Mr. Meyer said he wanted it. And from there on, it's just been up, up, up all the time. So we can all be very proud that we live in the place where it started. So thank you. And the universities that are working at this, trying to show, prove, and turn us back to healthy foods is all part of this. It started here. But there's another part of life besides food, besides whole grains. It's responsibility. And that is very important to me, and was very important to my wife. My responsibility, success creates responsibility. That's everybody's. Everybody, it does in everybody, no matter what you're doing. My responsibility was to create sustainability and permanence in my business with my employees through wages, benefits, profit sharing, and of course the 401k, which is now dictated, so I didn't think of it, but I had it long before it was required. That's me. I had hair then. Okay, so you're successful. What do you do when growing profits from a successful business? I hope that doesn't look like me in the bottom corner. Now that one's more like me. A lot of you know I have a bunch of Model A's. They're pretty cool. I like them a lot. But anyway, you got to think about this. I'm having a struggle with this. Thank goodness you came to this party.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah, thanks.
That's my job.
Oh, good. My goal when, a little too hot here. My goal when profit levels warranted it was to share a portion of those profits with each employee monthly if possible. I know this looks a little fakey here, but I can remember sitting down and looking at the profits and realizing that I had to have profits to keep the business going. How much of that profit could I set over here and give back to my employees? I couldn't make flour, I couldn't distribute it, I couldn't sack it without them. This goes back a long time. And so, sharing a portion of the company's profit every month we have for the past 27 years. And that's a real check, a separate check. I can remember David, my miller, the first time I gave him 2 checks in an envelope. David, here's your paycheck. Okay, thanks. Oh, here's another check. What what's this, Bob? And I said, well, that's your share of the profit sharing. And I'm so pleased and proud that I could do that, and I have not stopped yet. We've given a lot of money back to our employees with no requirement on the part of the government or anything of the kind. You can do it. Well, then, life goes on, smooth as anything, and you travel around the world and do things you want to do and go here and there, and then something just stops you dead, and I've had a few of those in my life. This isn't the first one. We had a young person running around seeing how bad they could do, and they burned me down. So at 60, I had to start over. That's interesting to think about it, even today at 90. But I created this because I had to have something to help me. Progress sometimes is just being there. County told me I couldn't rebuild the mill. It was wood and it burned down again. Wasn't enough room. This is a wonderful day, though. A few days, what had happened is this is that lovely mill that I showed you in the picture, and there's another one, and then there's another one there. We had wheat bins over the top, and when the fire burned those bins, they came down on the mills and actually kept them from getting so hot we couldn't use them again. So we were able to keep it going. There'd be some tough days ahead before we ran again. I put this little sign on my phone in my office at home. I put it on the dashboard of the car, and I still have it on my phone in my office now. Sometimes things it's hopeless. Don't do it. It's wasting your time. But progress sometimes is really just being there. And the next thing you know, it's better. It's like eating right. You just start in on yourself. Okay, within a year, we had relocated where this is where Dave's Killer Bread is. I bet a lot of you have been out there and seen him. I sold Dave this property, and that's where he's making that lovely whole grain bread, which is very good, and I have quite a bit of it. We got these mills going. These 3 mills all went through the fire. This one, and that one, and that one. And they're all in our lobby where when you come to the mill for a tour, you see them. It's been an interesting experience. Interesting experience. Now, we keep growing. It's crazy. And now here we are, this is where we are now. I'm sure most of you have driven down the road and seen this building. This is only half of what we have now. We have another 250,000 square feet just a little ways away because we need warehouses and everything else. So now we're close to 700,000 square feet, running 24/7. Pretty neat. Pretty neat. We have now created a wonderful lab, followed on state programs. Gluten-free test lab. Our gluten-free program has been one of the most successful in the country. Everything that is gluten-free, all the grains that are gluten-free, are brought in small quantities, 2,000 pounds, that's small for us, and tested in our lab before they're ever released through the plant. And it has worked wonderfully. We have standards now that used to be like 500 Anyway, it's changed a lot. Come way down. That's what happens when you get to be 90. But we do all the testing here, and we have about 25 staff running 3 shifts just to test and make sure that when we say something is gluten-free or all the other programs that we're into, that it is. And we don't have high-speed mills, but we have high-speed packaging lines, and they're wonderful. I can use the latest stuff on those, and some of them have been designed for us. We just had to in order to keep up with it. This machine right here does 60 5-pound bags a minute. I couldn't believe that. I just stand there looking at them. And see, of course, you have to go caged and stuff. That line I was just showing, standing by, makes everything, puts it on the pallet, and palletizes it, and nobody has to do anything. We just make sure it's running right. That's all. It's been pretty wonderful. We couldn't keep up with it if we didn't have some of this wonderful. And most of these machines were built around here. Okay, world distribution. I just told you about that, but here it is again. And then I'm sure a lot of you have been in our store. That was a part of our world. We wanted our mill back, the one that burned down. So we built this. Turned out to be a wonderful success. So very, very enjoyable. Okay, now I'm going to change the subject. The ultimate challenge of any successful business is what should the owners do as they get older, and I've surely gotten older. How about taking a leap of faith into the unknown and transferring the ownership to the employees for the future? ESOP. And that's what we did. We spent about 9 years, the partnership, looking for the options that we had as American businessmen with full ownership of the company, I might say. And the ESOP, and we signed that. ESOP means Employee Stock Ownership Plan. And it is the reality that the employees receive stock ownership of your company. You don't have it anymore, they do. And you got to get used to that in your head and living your life that way. And we are. So now my employees enjoy profit sharing and they enjoy company ownership. We couldn't do it all at once. It's pretty valuable. So we're at 2/3 now, working on the rest, but we'll get there. So there we are, the employee owners of Bob's Red Mill on my 81st birthday, or almost. Well, it says 450, but that's 150 off. I've been blessed by God, enabling me to live a rich and fruitful life. The best part is sharing those blessings with my wonderful people who truly bring everything to reality. I've enjoyed leading over the manufacturing and selling of whole grain products throughout the world. Products that never offend like so much food does today. We truly believe our mission statement, which is whole grain foods for every meal of the day. Good food, start simple. We keep it that way. Stone milling since 1978. These are signs we use in stores and stuff. We thought they were kind of cute. And I've enjoyed every minute of it. Thank you. Thanks, I could use that. Anybody have any questions?
Hi. I'd like you to address the gluten issue a little bit. There's multiple factors, as I understand it, that contribute to gluten being undesirable. One is the basic nature of gluten on the gut, and the other is the pesticide pollution inside of.
Well, pesticide is not part of that at all. I mean, you can address pesticides, and anybody knows that chemicals that you stick in your body, or whether you put it anywhere you put it, vegetables, fruit, grains, meat, doesn't make any difference what it is. I'll leave that one because it's just, we have, most of our products are organic, and if they are organic, they don't have that. So the gluten, for folks who are gluten intolerant, I don't know how long it took for us to figure out what was the matter with our bodies and stuff. There's a lot of people go back a long ways. And gluten has it affects our gut health, and some people just can't handle it. Some people just really can't handle it. They probably died years ago. But as research has shown us that this is an ingredient in grains, not all grains. Remember now, it's not all grains. that some grains, wheat, rye, barley, are high in gluten. Wheat is the highest. No, I think triticale is, because it's a cross between rye and wheat, and it has very high protein. And that's the stuff that people who have gluten intolerance they can't tolerate it. That's all there is to it. Now, I don't know that we've modified the grains through the centuries and millennia. Let's assume that the way we found the earth is the way it is. That some grains had gluten in it and some don't. So some things make us sick. Some things make some people sick. A bee bite. I've had bee bites in my life, didn't bother me at all. But I know many people who, if they have a bee bite, they have to head for the hospital. Now, what's the difference? They're just very allergic to it. And I have allergies to many things too. So I can't explain the human characteristics of allergies, which is sort of what this is. And I can't explain the makeup of grains. As far back as we go, we've got a lot of original grains, the Mediterranean areas and stuff, and they still had gluten in them. So a young person who has a gluten intolerance is going to have the same problem with wheat that's grown in Greece or someplace like that, because even though it's a much older variety, it still has the gluten in it. So, that's not much of an answer, is it?
Well,
what we've had to do is create two different mills, two different everything, air systems, storage systems, packaging room systems. We're two different companies, and we've been that way for a long time now, 25, 30 years. And but the biggest thing was testing. I have a lab, and there's people whose jobs all 24 hours a day is to test samples, and sometimes, in some cases, through the way we test, we get the same product, like as it's processed, through like up to 3 times. I promise you, if it says it's under 20 parts per million, which is the requirement, that it is. We just don't release it any other way. And we have countries like Australia, where the gluten intolerance is 5 parts per million, which is actually nothing. And we're able to meet those requirements through our processing. And we have to work with the farmers on all this too. They can't grow wheat one year and rice one year. They can't do that. It's just they're either doing gluten-free or they're not doing anything for us. You had a question?
I just wanted to tap in on that. As a mother of a child who has an autoimmune disease towards gluten, Bob's Red Mill has been amazing. It's given us options that we didn't have 30 years ago. It gave us choice of other grains to be able to make some kind of bread-like product, or even some kind of grain that we can eat that we knew was safe for the family. So I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Victoria. And I was forced into it by the GIG, Gluten Intolerance Group in Seattle.
But
It came down.
I do want to point out that if you do not have a gluten intolerance, gluten-free is not a healthier option.
Yeah, it really isn't any problem. Yeah. But anyway, they came down to me and they said, we want gluten-free products, and it's got to be somebody that's handling the grains and stuff. But we need to just separate all this stuff. But the process was intense. It took years to get these farmers to, are you going to grow one thing? I'm going to sign a contract for it. I'm going to buy it, but you can't grow anything else.
Why is that?
Well, you can't go back and forth. If you have a grain like wheat, let's just use wheat, because there are other glutinous grains, but let's use wheat. If they grow wheat one year and rice the next year, there's no way in the world that's not going to get mixed up. So that rice is going to have gluten in it, and it's going to make somebody sick. So, but by following these rules, and we've learned to make our own rules because the government made their rules and we just followed them. The 20 part used to be 500 parts per million, and that was pretty easy to keep. So, should I quit?
Well, I would just say, if they grow, and they're dedicated to either one of the other types of grain, but if they grow rice the second year or some gluten-free grain like millet, that grain isn't going to have gluten in it, but the field will have road spikes of wheat or whatever come up with the other grain that's gluten-free. Then they harvest it, it's all mixed together, it's stored in a tank that wasn't dedicated to gluten-free. The harvesting equipment has to be dedicated. Storage has to be, every single part of the operation has to be dedicated to gluten-free. So the grain itself doesn't get absorb gluten. It's still a gluten-free grain, but you can't rely on the fact that it's going to be gluten-free when you buy it. Ours is, though, because it's tested so many times.
It's been quite a process.
We are at the end of our time. We'll take one more question, and then we're going to have an open time for one-on-one questions
go
as well.
GMO, genetically modified organisms.
I don't have much problem anymore.
Okay, explain your view on that. There's GMOs, there's organic, and there's regular.
Well, organic is not GMO by any means. GMO is genetically modified. You take grains and you start messing around with it in a lab, and you make it bigger, grow faster, do this, do that, and it really is, you have to decide for yourself whether that genetically modified grain is something you should eat or not. I don't think it's going to kill you.
You do or you do not?
It didn't kill me, but but Europe won't take it.
Right.
We can't sell our grains anywhere if it's genetically modified, and they test it. I had to get out of that stuff. I don't have any genetically modified grain.
Okay, fine.
And I have 3 separate testing procedures for genetically modified. I'd be happy to show any of you through. As a bunch, I don't want to take you one at a time.
Why don't we thank Bob